Okay. I want to welcome everyone to Chassidus for Misnagdim. We meet at Schwartz, 1575 Coney Island Avenue, every Thursday evening at 9:15. And as always, we want to express our gratitude to TorahAnytime.com for recording and making the shir available to a much wider range of people. L'chaim Banu Chachmei Yisrael, we want to dedicate the Schwartz of tonight's Limud Torah to Refuah Shleima of Yosef Shalom and Chaim Usher, that's Rav Yashua, Zol Gesund sein, and Chaim Yisrael, Ben Chaim Tzil, Rav Belsky, Baruch Hashem, he went back to Yeshiva this week, back home, should be zeicha to the ganze Refuah. And we also want to dedicate it to the Refuah Shleima of Rivka Bas Baruch Abela and to Arya Leib, Ben Masha Hannah. It shall be zeicha to Refuah Shleima b'Seich Shachar Yisrael. Okay, so it was inevitable that in a series called Chassidus for Misnagdim, eventually we were going to get to learn a passage from the Sefer HaTanya. Tanya is known not just in the annals of Chabad, but in general Chassidish history. It's known as the Torah Shebiksav of Chassidus. There were some Chassidish Sfarim that antedated, that were earlier than the Tanya. Told us Yaakov Yosef, and then Pyrus Yosef from Yaakov Yosef Panoah was earlier. If I'm not mistaken, the Pri Ha'aretz from Mendel of Vitebsker. There might have been a few others that were earlier, but certainly this was the earliest, and one could certainly make a reasonable argument, the greatest systematic formulation of at least one major approach in Chassidus, known as Chabad Chassidus, by the acronyms of Chacham, Bina, V'das. You know, things don't always have to be lengthy to be great. In the history of world oratory, the Gettysburg Address is considered one of the finest speeches ever given. It took about 2.5 minutes to deliver. I think the greatest haskama I ever read about, or ever heard about on a sefer, was what Rabbi Uri Strelisker said about the Sefer HaTanya. He said that v'nempen as a große Gott and as a klein sefer. So you're able to compact such a great God into such a small sefer. It's not such a tiny sefer, but when one considers for a moment the infinite vastness of the Arein Seif Baruch Hu, of the infinity that is the Rabban Shalom that we worship, so basically it was a tremendous compliment that he grasped it. Somehow or another he was able to harness Gettlichkeit, godliness, and put it down in a sefer, in a systematic kind of theology. Okay. The parak that we're about to learn is the 5th parak of the Sefer Tanya, and I chose it for a pretty mild connection to this week's parsha. At the end of the parsha, there's the episode of Aaron and Miriam, depending on which of the Mefarshim we look at, either saying Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu or insulting him to his face. Some Mefarshim want to learn. But the bottom line is the issue was about the nature of the Nevuah. And the response, the defense, Kaviyachol, that the Eibishter, that the Rabban Shalom springs to, on behalf of Moshe Rabbeinu, delineates the difference between the Hasaga in Nevuah of Miriam and Aaron on the one hand, and Moshe Rabbeinu on the other hand. And this ultimately becomes one of the Ikrei Adas, one of the 13 principles of faith that every Jew has to believe in, and that is the supremacy of the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. What this passage in the Sefer Tanya is going to be speaking about is not Nevuah, but in a certain sense, an intellectual exercise for sub-Nevi'im that obviously has something to do with Nevuah. What I mean to say is Limud HaTorah. Anytime we learn Torah, Torah is the collected prophetic works of Moses, of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the definition of Torah. The Torah component of Tanakh is the Nevuahs of Moshe Rabbeinu, or what we call Torah. Zikru Torah's Moshe Avdi. So, anytime, any of us, as weak or as strong Torah scholars as we may be, weekend warriors or full-time Torah Nasim, anytime we're masik something in Torah, in a certain sense, Hanach Lem Yisrael, the men in the V'yamein, B'nai in the V'yamein. It is a function of Nevi'us. At any rate, he's going to be talking about what it means in general to grasp something in Torah intellectually for your mind. And I use these words very advisedly. And you'll see when we get to the shtickle inside, to wrap your mind around a Torah concept. And ancillary to that, he's going to give a definition of Torah Lishma, which, if you know something about the friction between Chassidus and Misnagdim, there was a lot of divergence in defining Torah Lishma. Okay. Parakeh. Now, what he's going on is, there's a shtickle, I believe it's from the Zohar. It's printed in all the Nusach Schwartz. You have Tefillah Kaidem HaTefillah from a Melech of Lezhensk. You also have something called Pasach Eliyahu. And in Pasach Eliyahu is the famous couplet, a famous passage that people use even when they're not reciting or not even that familiar with Pasach Eliyahu. Talking about God, I want to talk about a mystical Jewish theology. So, in that passage, Pasach Eliyahu, it says, Leis asar panui minei, there is no place void of you. Okay? If you don't know it from Pasach Eliyahu, you know from Uncle Moshe, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Right? No place void of you. And nevertheless, the great paradox, the great mystery of it all, V'leis machshava tvisa beklal. There's no mind that can grasp you at all. No mind, there's no thought process. The Aramaic words are leis machshava, there is no thought. Tvisa be, that grasps, that takes hold of it. Be in him and it, klal, at all. Okay? The most prevalent, the most intimate, and at the same time the most remote and abstract. That's what God is. Okay. Zok the Sefer HaTanya, the Heilige Tanya, the Alter Rebbe. Well, the Taisus beer, you want to give him a handout, please? Give him a handout, give him a Cholton Kegel. Okay. Well, the Taisus beer, Ber Heitiv, and to give an additional explanation, a better explanation, Loshen Tzvisa Sham Eliyahu, the verbiage of grasping that Eliyahu said, Leis Machshava Tzvisa Bachlal, right? That I was quoting to you before. Hine, Kol Seichel, all minds, Keshem Maskil. Okay, a parent does parenting, a Seichel does Seicheling. Okay, Kol Seichel, Keshem Maskil, when it's Maskil, Umasik Besichlei, and grasps within its mind. Eze Muskel, okay, the concept of being grasped is called a muskel. Seichel, Maskil, Muskel. Conjugations of the same noun, verb, whatever you want to call it. Hare ha-seichel taifis es ha-muskel umakifai besichloi. Okay? These are anthropomorphisms. I doubt that a neuroscientist would explain human cognition in exactly these terms, but it's a mushal to help us understand. Okay? Think of absorption. Think of wrapping a container around the contents. That's how he's explaining human cognition. When the seichel is maskil and muskel, what happens is ha-seichel taifis is a muskel and makifah. It grabs it and it surrounds it. Hekef means circumnavigation, all the way around. Va-muskel nitfes umukaf. The concept is grabbed and surrounded. Umelubash b'teich ha-seichel, and garbed and clothed within the seichel. Shehisiga, that grasped it, the iskiloi, and was masculine. Again, I don't have a good English translation for that verb. The gamma seichel melubish b'muskel b'shashem asiga v'taisa b'sichlei. This is the conundrum. I'm going to translate the words, but I don't understand this. I don't understand how something can be the garment and be the thing that's clothed at the same time, but that's what he says. Not only does the seichel clothe the muskel, but at the same time the muskel clothes the seichel. The seichel is around the concept and the concept is around the seichel. I can tell you this, that in Chassidus Svarim there are terms called or makif and or pnimi, a surrounding light and an inner light. So if we say that the cognition is enlightenment, maybe we say it's both things. The muscle, the thing that's being grasped, is surrounded by the mind, and then it serves as an or pnimi for the mind. It, at the same time, simultaneously, somehow or another, surrounds the mind. That's what we would call, I guess, an or makif. I'm just saying words. I can't. I'm not wrapping my mind around this. I'm not saying I have any deep understanding exactly. I'm just learning it to show you some depth and profundity of the Baal Tanya, and also, like I said, to the way he's going to contrast this with trying to be maskil godliness. Okay. Derech mashal, for example, Keshad the Mevinu Masik Ezu Halacha b'Mishnah b'Gemara La'Ashura Al Burya. When somebody understands a din, he learns some Mishnayos and he understands the dinim that the Tana of his Mishnah was trying to teach. Or he learned the Shlikla Gemara and he worked his way through the various Shittas and the Machlaikas, right? And now he knows clearly who holds what and maybe even who we paskin like. He knows it clear and he knows it with clarity. Hare Sichle Taifis Umakavaise. So his mind grasps that Mishnah, or that din at least, and surrounds it. V'gam Sichle Melubish B'Bayis Shah. And his mind is also cloaked in it at the same time. Okay, again, I'm not sure how that works, but he said it twice already. Al Pishnai made him Yakum Dover. V'inei halacha zu hi chachmaser ritzayna shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Grasping a Torah law, grasping Shosh Nagach Dal V'Hei, grasping Asal Adam Lahanas Me'al Mazeh B'li Bracha. Yeah, when you grasp these things, okay, it's not the same thing as grasping the idea that you're not allowed to drive 50 in a 30 mile per hour zone, or that you have to obey, red lights and come to a full stop when you see a red light. It's not grasping Torah law is not the same thing as grasping laws that were promulgated by human legislators. It makes no difference if they're legal laws or if they're laws of nature. Well, actually, there is a difference. But at any rate, I'm just saying it by way of contrast. Why? Because a Torah law, Shasha Nagach Dal V'Hei, these laws are Ritzayni Yisbarach. That is Hashem's will. Hashem reveals His will at Har Sinai, and Ani Mamen B'Amun Shleimish L'Kol HaTorah HaMitzuy Atam B'Yadeinu Yenesun L'Moshe. I'm paraphrasing, but we all know that there's such an ikr and Amun. It's printed in the back of Shachris and Asidurim. Yeah, the Torah we have is the Torah that was given at Har Sinai. When somebody harvets in Torah, when somebody tries to understand Allah and Torah, and certainly when somebody grasps Allah and Torah, he's grasping the will of God. God reveals His will, He communicates His will through speech, somehow or another. How a being without lips and teeth and a larynx speaks, I'm not quite sure. It's one of the great miracles and mysteries, but that's part of what Nevuah is, and that's what part of Ma'amad Har Sinai was. Yeah? We were all Nevi'im, we all heard the voice of God. And the Torah in its entirety, that's what it is. It's a prophetic revelation of the will of God. The laws of the Torah are that will quantified, detailed. So when you chap a detail of halacha, you've chapped something of Ritzayni Yisbarach, of Hashem's will. Sha'ala b'Ritzayni, it arose in the divine will. Shekeshayit and Reuven kach v'kach derech mashal. Yeah, Reuven Altaina, I lent you $1,000. V'Shimon kach v'kach, and Shimon said no, it was only $500. We call that Midah and Mixes. Yeh psak b'neim, the rule between them will be kach v'kach. Shimon's got to take an oath or he loses the other $500. Right? That's what's in Hashem. Hashem wants in these hypothetical, in these theoretical cases, whether they ever come l'maisa or not, this is what He wants the law should be. If it never was and never will be, never come such an actual case to court, on these exact claims and demands, nevertheless, once that's what arose in the divine will, the chachmas and His wisdom, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shemyitin zakach v'zakach yepsakach. If Reuven says A and Shimon says B, the din will be C. Hare kasha adam yadeu masik b'sichlei Psak Zek Halacha, Harucha b'Mishnah, when he grasps what the halacha is, as it's explained in the Mishnah, b'Gemara, Paiskim, Harei Zeh Masik v'Taifis u'Makev b'Sichlei, Ritzayna v'Chachmas Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. The man is grasping, and his mind is surrounding and absorbing something divine.
What happens when there's a machlokas, and he's learning the machlokas?
Okay. I'm sure you've heard the Chazal of Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim.
And how do we fit that in with the Ratz? The Baal Tanya is saying that when you learn the Torah, you're learning the Ratzon Hashem. How do we put together Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim with the Torah is the Ratzon Hashem? Because Hashem has one Ratzon, he doesn't have multiple.
Does he?
All right, then I'm raising it as
Let me ask you, okay. So let me take the discussion two ways, okay? We are monotheists, right? To be a monotheist means not just to be able to hold mutually exclusive thoughts in our head at the same time, but to believe in a creator and in a being that we call God, in a theology that is antithetical to itself, that is the source of things that seem mutually incompatible, okay? Mutually exclusive. Okay? Gemara Bracha says that when we learn Kriya Shema, you have to be masker midas hayam b'layla, midas halayla b'yam. When you make hamar v'aravim, you have to say umavi yom umavi layla. You have to speak about the yom. Right? When we make Birchas Yatzar in the morning, we mention the night. Why is that? Because the pagans, the polytheists, said can't be. It's got to be a sun god and a moon god. Pick your horse and bet on him. You can decide which god to worship, but it's impossible. The God that made darkness is the same one that made light, and made the moon is the one that made the sun. Yeah. Which is Ratzon Hashem? What's the optimum topography for the earth? The Alps or Death Valley? The equator or the polar ice caps? Make up your mind. How do you want it to be? If in nature you can see Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, why can't you understand such a thing in Torah? I'll tell you a great, it's just mamish, I think we should contact Hanoch Teller, because maybe this is a Hashgacha Prata story. Because I read this in a Haskama to a Sefer. I happened to be browsing through an English language Sefer. I happened to be browsing through at lunch today. I saw an unbelievable, beautiful mashal from Rabbi Dr. A.J. Twersky, famous psychiatrist and scion of the not Zidishav, Rimmenover, Chernobyl, I forgot already. Which one of the great houses of Chassidus? The Twerskis, a Kitzer. Okay. Obviously, he's coming from a Chassidish viewpoint, and the fellow who was writing the Sefer was a Musa Sefer. And he was coming to him for Haskama. So he gave a beautiful mashal like this. He says, you have a beautiful, multifaceted diamond. Okay? You look at the diamond from one angle, it looks blue. You look at it from another angle, it's orange. What's the true color of the diamond? The answer is they're all true. Torah is a diamond. Yikari mipnimim. Halacha lamaisa, that's a separate thing. There can only be at any given time, at every given point in the evolution or the devolution of halacha, there can only be one way to be manik lamaisa, one correct way. Even that's not such a true statement, because nowadays you have machlokes hapaiskim. Some eidas go after this psak, some eidas go after that psak, but at least until chasimis hatalmud, shall we say, all right? But in Torah, in abstract Torah, Torah is bigger than halacha l'maisa. We learned last week that Torah is bigger than the Hebrew alphabet, the Lashon Kodesh alphabet. Torah is also bigger than halacha l'maisa. Let me ask you a question. Okay, we're not big balahera over here, but we know we pass like Beis Hillel, not like Beis Shammai. Let's say I could put together for you a sefer that's the collected piskei halacha of Beis Shammai. Can you make a birchas hatayra on that, or it's a bracha levatala? We do. Okay. So it's Torah. It's not halacha, but it's Torah. And it's elu divrei Elokim Chaim. All right, we're getting a little bit, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's try to. I can't do any better with your question than that. At least not on short notice. Let him finish his presentation, and maybe the question will fall away on its own. Okay. So, When a person understands a din from a Gemara, he understands the psak, he says that you've wrapped your mind around it. The will and the wisdom of God. One second. Eliyahu taught us, you can't grasp God. Okay? And as the Rambam famously writes, Hu amada, hu yadeya, hu anaida. It's not like a human being that conceptions lie outside the being of the human. You know, I do understand something, I don't understand something. I'm still the same person. I did know something at one time, and now I forgot it. I don't cease to be. I'm not identified with my asagis. My identity is not consistent of what my wisdom is. Even though people who can be greater than their wisdom, right? Right? We are not just our chachma. As human beings, we're not our chachma. But the Creator is. Yeah, that's the Rambam. And then he ends off with a poetic flourish after supposedly giving us some kind of insight into theology. Then he says, Vili yadaita v'yisif. If I would know God, I would be God. I can't really know Him. I'll give you an approximation, but to be God, to know God is to be God. So the Baal Tanya over here is saying, we don't know God. We don't know the raw God. The raw, naked God is leis machshava tvisa b'lei klal. But a clothed God, that we can know, that we can wrap our minds around. Ki im bislabshusam ba'halachas haruchas l'faneinu v'gam sichlei melubish b'hem. The only way to circumvent, to find a loophole in Eliyahu Hanavi's ironclad rule, leis machshava tvisa bei klal. You're everywhere, but we can't grasp you at all. The only way somewhat to circumvent that is to know Torah. When you know Torah, you're not grasping Hashem straight, but you're grasping Hashem, as it were, with a glove on. He's got a glove on, you've got a glove on. That's how you can grasp Hashem. Bislabshusam, the clothed, the chachma, the seichel kaviyachal of Hashem is clothed in halachas haruchas l'fanenu. V'gam sichlei melubish b'hem. Yeah, and when you masik something in Torah, like you said before, not only are you the garment, but you are the thing that's clothed as well. Your mind is the thing that's clothed. V'yichud nifla, shein yichud kamayu, v'loi ke'erke nimtza klal begashmius. Lias la'achadim v'yuchadim mamish mikol tzadupina. He's waxing very, very mystical over here, and poetic. He's saying there's a yichud nifla, the unity. Okay? And again, I think it's the nub of it is in this paradox that he's articulating. Yeah, that your mind is clothing the concept, but the concept is also clothing your mind at the same time. You know, you want to muscle for it. You know, again, I'm grasping, I'm clutching at straws over here to talk about things a little bit beyond my ken. So maybe some of you remember the old-time barbershops. Yeah, they had mirrors on both walls. Yeah. And you look in the mirror on that wall, and you're seeing your reflection of the back of your head, but also the front of your head, and it just, the two mirrors just keep on reflecting one another, and it seems to stretch off into infinity. I'm not a physicist, I don't know if it's really infinity, and maybe we should worship the mirrors. If that's infinity, maybe that's God. I don't know, right? But this idea that there's no front view and there's no rear view anymore, it's like, it's holistic, it's like a hologram, it's like all around you. Okay, any other yichud, yeah. You think in human terms, yeah. The chess piece is not the chess board, yeah. The roof is not the vertical walls of the house. The zachar is not the nekeva. Okay? Psychologists today, sometimes they play role reversal games. They say, parents and children are having sichsuchim. They're having, you know what? You talk like your father talks to you, and you pretend like you're your teenage son who's giving you a lot of back talk. And let's see how you sound to each other. There could be role reversals, but weiter in role reversals, there's only one father and only one son at the same time. You can't have simultaneously the father is the son and the son is the father. The pawn is the chessboard and the chessboard is the pawn. Can't have that. That kind of melting and melding together of identities, that's something that's only shaykh in Hasaga. The human mind is capable of being malabish, the concept, says the Baal Tanya, and being malubish by the concept. And when it's a Torah concept, he said the yichud, the union that you're experiencing, parenthetically, Chassidus from Misnagdim, right? I don't know how anyone can learn this shtickle of the Tanya and walk around with the canard that Chassidim, they don't value Torah, they're not b'nei Torah, they like to eat and drink and dance and sing. And he, in such beautiful, profound, poetic, mystical terms, he's basically talking about Limud HaTorah and Hasagas Limud HaTorah as the highest ecstatic religious experience that a human being is capable of. So it's a yichud nifla shein yichud kamayu. There's no way to unite with God. You want to talk about a spiritual person. A spiritual person, nemzat some learning. That's what the Baal Tanya is saying. You want spirituality? You want godliness? Learn Shoshanagach Talvei. Open up a Mishnah Brewer. Open up a Tanya. It's also a Torah concept, I think. It also qualifies. Yichud nifla, shein yichud kamayu, v'loy ke'erka nimtza klal begashmius, liyas la'achodim yuchodim mamish, mikol tzad l'pina. Anywhere you turn, I'm surrounded, I'm here, I'm there, I'm backwards, I'm forwards, I'm the front view, I'm the rear view, I'm the chess piece, I'm the chessboard. It's only in Hasaga Sichlis, and I think he's saying it's only in Hasaga Sichlis entire, not in Stama, on intellectual cognition. V'zois ma'illi yisayra gedoyla v'neflo lein kates. Asher b'mitzvos yediyas hatayr v'asagasa al kol ha-mitzvos ma'asiyas. This is something that, when we say Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, this is an aspect that makes Torah superior to all the practical, the activity mitzvahs. Va'afilu al mitzvahs hatliyas b'dibur. Torah is even greater because it takes place in the mind. It's even greater than other mitzvahs that depend on speech, brachas, and davening, and having to make shvuas when the halacha calls for them. There are many mitzvahs of dibur, right? And dibur is also, you could say it's a uniquely human thing. Say human cognition, the human mind is something uniquely human, something very godly about a human being is the kind of minds that we have. It's not an animal mind. Human speech is also very uniquely human. It's still, it's nothing compared to the Torah itself. And even when you enunciate the things that you're learning, we're talking about right here, chapping something from Torah in your cup, in your mind. There is no yichud. There's no spirituality. There's no godliness. There's no religious experience like that. They call mitzvah shebedibur u'maisa through all of those other mitzvahs of speech, of deed. You make a bracha on arba minim. You shake arba minim. Hakadosh Baruch Hu malbish es hanefesh umakifa or Hashem mereisha v'ad ragla. So Hashem comes and clothes the soul and surrounds it with a godly kind of light from his head to his toes, from his head to his feet. Uviyidiyas hatayra milvash hasecha melubish b'chachmas Hashem. Besides that outer or makif that surrounds the mind, or that surrounds the entirety of the person's being, hinegam chachmas Hashem b'kirbay. It's an arpnimi. It's inside of you too. Your mind is not just melubash. Your mind is the malbish. Mashasechel masig u'taifis u'masig u'makif b'sichle. What the seichel conceives, grasps, and surrounds with its seichel. Mashashel loy litvais u'lahasig midiyas Torah. That which is capable of grasping from Torah knowledge. Ish kafi sichle. Look, not every person has the same mind. Shem Shem Pitzafan Shabbos, Chazal tells, Kach and De'esan Shabbos. Some know two people look exactly alike. No two people think exactly alike, grasp intellectual things exactly alike. So every person, according to his cycle, as much as he can take out of the Torah, and Pardes. Pardes is Rosh Hashanah stands for Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Side. 4 facets of Torah. Ulafi should be Yediyas HaTorah. HaTorah Mulbesh B'nefesh Adam V'sichlai. Since when it comes to Yediyas HaTorah, the Torah is clothed by the soul of man and his mind. Umukefes B'saycham, and is surrounded all the way around. Within them, Lochein Nikres B'Shem Lechem Umazain Anafshi. That's why Torah is sometimes metaphorically referred to as food, bread. L'chul lachmu b'lachmi. Shsu yain I forget the end of the pasuk. So I said the lechem is the Torah Shebiksav, and the yain is the Torah Shebalpeh. The bottom line is, these are things that are ingested. Why? What's the mashal? Ki kamosh halechem agashmi zanes aguf k'shemachnis b'seicha v'kir by mamish. Yeah, you are what you eat. Yeah, lechem is something that is absorbed, that's taken into your very body, right? And it sustains you because you took it in on a physical level. It sustains your physical plant. V'nepach sham liyizdam ubasar kibsaret v'za yichah v'yischayim. It's digested, it's broken down there, it becomes your blood, it becomes your flesh, it becomes your nerve endings, all the chemicals, however the miracle of the digestive process that breaks things down and allows you to go on living, lets your physical plant go on living. Kach b'yediyas HaTorah v'asagasa, so too, when it comes to the knowledge and the grasping of Torah b'nefesh Adam, shalaimda, in the soul of a man who learns it, hatev, well, Be'iyun sichlei, with the full investigation of his mind, ad shenitvas b'sichlei, until it's grasped by the mind, u'misachedes ima, and unites with the mind, v'yolachadim, and they become as one. Nasa mazon lenefesh v'chayim b'kirbay mechayah chayim ein soif baruch hu hamalubish b'chachmasa v'tarasa. Yeah, we touched on this in the past. Yeah, the holiness of actual physical food. And we learned from the Ber Mayim Chaim, we learned how there's a Mitzvah Pi Hashem in physical bread too. That's a chiddush. But to say that there's Mitzvah Pi Hashem in Chachmas HaTorah, that's a Mitzvah Pi Hashem. That's Hashem spoke to us and He gave us the Torah. That is actually the Mitzvah Pi Hashem. So he's saying, the Ar Makif part, the aspect of Torah that surrounds the person, the Shama, surrounds the person's mind, that's something the Torah shares in common with Mitzvos Maisiyos too. But this aspect of the Torah, that the mind surrounds the Torah gets into the inner part of the mind, of the human mind, that's the life of the mind, that's the life of the soul. That sustaining power, like food that gets taken into a body sustains the body, Torah that's taken into a mind sustains the mind and the soul. This is what the pasuk means when it says that your Torah is within my innards. It's a metaphor. The clothing that the souls are going to clothe themselves with in Gan Eden, those are the mitzvahs that they performed. But what's going to sustain them? Not what's going to clothe them. What's going to sustain the neshamas in the world to come in Gan Eden? Not the mitzvahs maisiyas that they did, but the Torah that they studied. His definition of Lishma, Reb Chaim Volozhin would probably take issue with this, but his definition, at least, again, I'm not a baki in the entire oeuvre of Chassidus or even of the Baal Tanya, but here he's defining Torah Lishma to mean that you're learning Torah for the sake of this kind of life-giving connection, this yichud nifla that he described before, and in particular, which element of the yichud nifla? That you took Torah into yourself. Not that the Torah is surrounding you, but that you're surrounding the Torah. To bind your soul to the Chai HaChaim, to the life of life, to the ultimate life giver, the Eibishter, by means of the Torah. Ish kafi sichlai, every man according to his own seichel, k'moshe kazav pri etz chaim. V'hamazon hi bechinas or pnimi. The food is the aspect, is the bechina of the inner light. V'halevushim, but the clothing, which we said correlates to the mitzvahs maisius, bechinas makifim. That's the bechina of the surrounding light. L'chein amar Chazal, shetalmud Torah shokol k'nei kol ha-mitzvahs. Talmud Torah is of equal gravity, of equal weight to all the other mitzvahs. Why? L'fisha mitzvahs and levushim levad. Other mitzvahs are merely outer garments. The Torah he mazon the gam levush l'nefesh ha-maskelos. Torah plays both roles. Yes, it's a levush. Yes, it surrounds the soul, but it's surrounded by the soul too. It's being surrounded by the soul. It sustains the soul, gives mazon to the soul. Shem is labish ba biyuna v'limuda. Certainly, when he pronounces the words of Torah with his mouth, with dibur, shehevel adibur nasa bechinas ar makif, then you took it in, but you let it out, and again you get this yichud nifla, where you're united from the inside and the outside, and the roles are no longer clearly defined. It's one big mellifluence, suffusion of light. Okay? Heady stuff, but again, I felt a little bit remiss that we're learning Chassidus for so long, and we never did a Tanya. Okay, something a little bit more comprehensible, turn over, and it is on the Parsha. I'm going to do a quick, but very, very fascinating, and to my way of thinking, very profound shtickle from the Mashalach, from the Ishbitzer. Here's the thing. The issue at hand is hair in Judaism. Are we for it or against it? Is hair a good thing or not? Well, depends, I guess. Is it on animals or on a human being? If it's on a human being, is it on a male or is it on a female? Which part of the body is it on? What age? Right? I mean, that's not a simple answer. But here's the thing that he's confused by. In two consecutive parshias, you have two kinds of kedushas that are described. Last week's parsha in Nasai, we learn about the Nazir. In this week's parsha in Ba'alaischa, we learn about the kedushas halavim. What gives the Nazir's kedusha? The long hair, growing the hair. Yeah, we had a whole conundrum last week. How can you be called a Nazir after your vow of Nazirus is over? But certainly, while you're a Nazir, you're a Nazir. And the Nazir's kaddish, gadel peras ha'aroshay. Grow that hair long, that's your kedusha. Yeah? The Leviim are chosen from Klal Yisrael to serve Hashem this week. What happens to Leviim? They got a full body shave. So, are we pro hair or are we anti hair? Is hair associated with kedusha or isn't it? Let's see inside. The Haviru Tara al Kol B'Sarim, pass a razor over all the flesh. Inyan kedusha Leviim shahaya b'havar asar. The kedusha of the Leviim came through passing the razor, shaving. Over Nazik siv gadel parasai reishay. I mean, it's a fragmentary quote. The pasuk begins kadashiyah. Yeah, that's his kedusha. Is by gadel parasai reishay. So he says like this, and this I got to take on faith from him. Kisaris mayra al kas k'mavur b'zayah kaddish. Okay, if we would be students of the Zayah, we would know this too. We're not, so I have to take it on faith from the Mashalayach. It says in the Zayah, it says, hair has to do with anger. Okay? A hairy person is an angry person. A bald person is someone who has much less anger management issues, apparently. Zokter Azay. Halavim haya menukim umezuchachim mitaiva. Leviim did not have an issue with taiva. Lachein tzrichim lahavir hasar. That's why they've got to get rid of their hair, because once you've eliminated the problem of taiva, your other big spiritual challenge is anger. You're not a lusty person, we're afraid you might be an angry person. Your anger is embodied in your hair. Get rid of your anger. Lose the anger. Lose the hair. Okay. Before I go weiter, let me give you a little background to help you understand this a little bit better. Chachmas HaKabbalah that Chassidus bases itself very much on, has a lot of Torah about what are called the spheres. There are 10 spheres, and all of us are pretty familiar, at least with the last 7 spheres, because those are the midas that we talk about during Spheres Eimer. Right? Okay. What we may not know so well is what I've learned in Pisvarim and Pisayfrim is that, like in a Hegelian dialectic, all of the midas, all the spheres, are thesis, antithesis, synthesis. There's a thing, that there is its antithetical opposite, and there's a midah in the middle that somehow compromises and mollifies between the two. So, chesed is kindness. It's the right hand, the way it's always diagrammed. When the 10 spheres are laid out, superimposed on the human body, chesed always occupies the right arm. Right? Gvura is the left arm. Okay? The right is not the left. No, it's not right, not the left. The right opposes the left. Ever did isometric exercises? Yeah, the right pushes against the left. But even if you don't think as the right part of my body and the left part of my body as being antithetical to one another, okay? Recent neuroscience has taught us, that you have right-brain people and left-brain people, and it's mamish in stroke victims. When they rehab stroke victims, they have to know which part of the brain was affected, which side of the brain was affected. It can make a difference if it's your math and science side, if it's your poetry and then humanities side. Different parts of the brain, are masig different things. But anyway, in Svarim it says, Chesed and Gvura are really antithetical to one another. Chesed wants to give and give and give and expand, and Gvura wants absolute pure justice, unmitigated with any mercy, and it wants to contract, and so on and so forth. And the midah in the middle, Tiferes, somehow or another, resolves it. I don't know how, but as I state in Svarim. Okay. So, point number 1. Point number 2, whatever exists in the Sitra de Kedusha, whatever exists in the side of Taiv, has an evil, diabolical twin, if you will, in the Sitra Akra, the tzad of Tumah, the tzad of evil. So, for example, the first 2 avos of Klal Yisrael embody these 2 midas. Avram Avinu, Tita Nemes Liakov, Chesed LaAvram. Avram Avinu is identified with Chesed. We know he was a big Baal Chesed, especially when it came to Achnas Sarkim. Right? He had the tent that was open on all 4 sides. He went out running and looking for guests. He was Malech Chesed, Malech Chasadim. He was a giver, he was an expander. He spread the faith all over the world and so on. His waste byproduct is Yishmael. Yishmael, Chazal tell us, 10 measures of znus came down to the world, 9 were taken by the Arabs, and 1 was distributed to the rest of the world. So in other words, a love gone bad, or a corrupted love, is a lust. A corrupted might, a corrupted justice is harsh. Justice imposes itself, imposes its will. It's every justice system, every governmental system. That's what din and gvura are. What's the waste byproduct of that? Cruelty, sadism, murder, empire building soaked in blood. That's Esav. Esav is the waste byproduct of the midah of Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak is gvura. The waste, the ugly inverted twin, is whatchamacallit, is Esav, Shayfach Damim, a dictator, and so on, an emperor. So, put those 2 things together, and you begin to understand this a little bit. Okay? Chazal tell us, La'olam yargiz adam yetzer taiva al yetzer hara. Stam yetzer hara, the Chazal, is the yetzer hara of taiva, of physical lust. Right? How do you combat lust? With reges, with anger. Don't just say, you should get your Yetzer Tov in gear. You should get him back into the saddle. You should replace him on the throne. You should empower him. Yargis, get him angry. Okay? Famous Nazim in Adarim. When his Yetzer Hara came to him and wanted him to sin with Taiva, he got angry at him. He said, Russia, what are you getting so hardy in the world? You can tell from the dialogue that the Gemara recounts that them's fighting words. He's talking very angry. Okay. So again, but you have to understand again the intrinsic tension between chesed and gvura on the one hand, and between their waste byproducts too, between taiva and kas and shvichas damim on the other hand. So zok the me'ashiloyach, yeah. If you're not clean of taiva, then kas still has its purpose. Kas is antithetical to taiva. Kas will get taiva under control. Hopefully, with the holy kind of kas, the kas that we call gvura. Ezu gibar, kaivish as yitzre. But they're related. Gvura is related to kas, and chesed is related to taiva, to znus. Those are not antithetical to one another. One is, they're the waste byproducts of one another. They're the evil twin, if you will, of one another. Yeah? But they're not fighting, they're not in tension with one another. Chesed and gvura are in tension with one another, and taiva and kas are in tension with one another. Dr. Azai. Kisairis Meiral Kas, K'mavav B'Zayah Kaddish. V'alavim ay menukim b'zochem etaiva. The Levim already had no taiva. Again, I'm taking it on faith. Okay, fine. They didn't have issues with taiva. L'chein tzrichim lahaver asar. If you've got no taiva, so your anger has outlived its usefulness. There's no use for your anger. And if your anger is embodied in your hair, get rid of it. The nazir, however, a nazir, hainu shenichnas chasrayna b'midas hataiva. His chasar, the problem with the nazir is in the taiva department. You all know the famous chazal. Why is saita next to nazir in the Torah? That any nazir, any person who sees a raya, saita b'kalkula, yazer atzmim minayayin. What are one of the things we say in the pep talk to the saita? Biti harbe yayin aisa. Maybe you were drunk at the time, fess up. Yeah? Yayin, we know the results of yayin of Noach. He comes out of the teva, he drinks yayin, and right away a mice of znus ensues. Right? We associate znus, Light and his daughters, they got their father drunk before they did what they had to do. Yeah, we associate wine consumption with znus, with taiva. The nega taiva. Okay, so far he's been speaking very spooky, very, very Kabbalistic. What he's about to say now is very Freudian, except he was before Freud. Okay? It's unbelievable what he's about to say now. V'neged taiva yesh eitza, she'adam yachnes atzma b'kas. Kas dries up taiva. Kas is antithetical to taiva. So if you've got a problem with taiva, you need your hair. Adarabba, grow your hair long. Your hair is kas, your hair makes you passionate and fiery. I don't mean passionate for women. I mean passionate, righteous indignation passionate. Yeah? Keep your hair. Grow your hair long. It'll be your source of strength.
There's a good kind of
Vu, what?
You're saying there's a good kind of kas.
Apparently. Vu gamken, oh, now listen to this. Unbelievable what he says here right now. Here's the Freudian point. It's a famous chazal that talks about how to do battle with the Yetzer Hara. Yeah? If a person sees his Yetzer Hara coming upon him, yeah, he should learn Krishma. If Krishma doesn't work, he should schlep him to the base medrash. If learning Torah doesn't help him, he should learn Krishma. If learning Kriya Shema doesn't help him, he should remember the day of his death. If that doesn't help him, Chazal say, Yilbash Shchayrim, V'yisatev Shchayrim, it's one of the most unbelievable chazals in Gan Shas. Yeah? It's giving you an eitzah for damage control. You're not going to win. Okay, the eitzah is going to. That's the prosaic way of learning the Gemara. It's not another eitzah to fight the eitzah. It's when you lose, how do you minimize the chilul Hashem? Wear black, cloak yourself in black, go someplace where they don't know you, and whatever, and you'll have to do whatever you need to do. But at least you've minimized damage control. You minimize the damage. That's what it sounds like. He's saying like this. Yilbash Chaim V'Yisat Chaim is not talking about your haberdashery. It's not talking you went to the right place in Borough Park. Which shade of black would you like your suit in? That's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking about not your goof. We're talking about your neshama. And when a neshama wears black and cloaks itself in black, you know what that's called? That's called mara shchara. That's called depression. Okay? So what's depression? I'm sad. No, that's not what depression is. You're angry. Be angry at yourself. Depression is angered and frustration turned inward. Turned on yourself. You're not exporting it. You're not taking it out on anybody else. You're taking it out on yourself. It manifests itself in a depression, in a sadness. This is what the Meshulach teaches. He says, "V'neged taiva yesh eitzah." Against taiva, to fight taiva, there is an eitzah. Shahadam yachnis atzmei bekas. Bring yourself into a situation of anger. Kamashikaz b'gemar yilbash chayrim hainu mayra shchayra. It's not a way of giving up. It's yet another way to do battle. Torah didn't help. Krishna didn't help. Remembering the day that you die doesn't help. Get angry. Get angry? I should take it out on somebody else. I'm having a problem with my Yetzer Hara. I should start screaming at people. No, get angry at yourself. You get angry at yourself, that's what we call depression. That's Mar Shchayra. V'ugam kein Indian kas. That's also an Indian of kas. V'zeu eitzel lihinotzel metaiva, lichnas atzim v'kas. One of the ways of getting out of taiva is having kas. V'zeh shenitztava lagadol pera. That's why a nazir is commanded to grow his hair long. Kamoshe mavar al pasuk v'yishlach hazarav. Okay, you have to look up what the Meshulach says in Pashas Noach. When Noach sent the Erev out of the taiva, he says similar kind of a taiva, that kas is the antidote to taiva. But at any rate, the two big yesayas here, he says, one is mystical and one is psychological. The mystical yesayah he says is that somehow hair, and in particular long hair, is associated with anger. And the psychological insight that he says is that sadness is not some sadness. Sadness is a form of anger. Now, I know what you're going to ask, because Rabbi Korman, because we've all been, even us Misnagdim, have been affected by the ubiquitous proselytizing of various factions within the Breslover Chassidus camp, and therefore we're always told that mitzvah gedali is b'simcha tamid. The worst thing in the world is to be depressed.
We're assuming the worst thing Ramban says. You get it from Ramban's anger.
Well, you know it from the Ramban, I know it from Nachum Breslover.
From Menachem from Breslover, I'm saying, you get it from Ramban says the kas causes a person to sin.
Absolutely. And that's why the Levium had to get rid of their hair and had to get rid of their kas. But if you're still afflicted with taiva, then kas can be sublimated for positive uses. That he should say that this kind of kas that we call depression, has a positive use, is an absolutely radical chiddush that I don't think anybody else in the world says. But that's, as I learned up Pshat in the Gemara, but in so doing, he found for his, a very radical mechudesh to the Gemara. What's the Gemara telling you? A how-to sin manual? If you got to sin already, okay, you're not going to win the Yetzer this time. Okay, damage control. Go to another city. Yeah, I mean that's Pashut Pshat in the Gemara. He doesn't like that. He wants another Eitzah. What's my last line of defense? If remembering the day of my death didn't do it, as depressing as that should be, you would think, right? If that didn't do it, what should I do? Get sad, get depressed. Because getting depressed, it's much quicker than growing your hair long. Getting depressed is a kind of anger, it's a kind of inner directed anger, and somehow or another, anger and taiva are antithetical to one another. Like in the Sitra, the Kedusha, Chesed and Gvura are antithetical to one another. If it doesn't have some moderating thing in the middle, it's hard for them to coexist. So too, taiva and kas fight with one another, and kas has a capacity to defeat taiva.
But depression also is good. In the Atzvus, he's saying to be depressed.
Maybe there's a difference between Mar Shchayra and Atzvus. I don't know. He's saying that the Gemara is giving an Eitzah to come into a Mar Shchayra. Well, but before I learned this Meshulach, I certainly thought they were synonymous terms. I thought Mar Shchayra was.
One has an end, and the other is aim l'davar sof. And the Mitzvos, you never get out of it. But the Morish Torah is a temporary thing
to battle the taiva.
Yeah. I have two comments. One is that it says that the Levium should should shave their hair because they don't have taivas. But it sounds like he's saying the source of the taiva is the hair. So if you get rid of the hair, you won't have taiva. But
no. That's not what he's saying at all. The source of the taiva is taiva. Whatever the source of the taiva is, if you're nucky from taiva, if you're ice garbage, if you've worked on your midas to the point where taiva is no longer a challenge to you, then hair becomes extraneous. Then hair has outlived its usefulness. It's not that hair is the source of the taiva. Hair is the antidote to the taiva. But you don't need to take medicine when you're not sick.
No, by Shimshon,
yeah.
The taiva did him in, and she cut his hair. So we see that there was a taiva, and he didn't have the hair. But we're saying when there's no taiva, there's how do we factor
it's a good kasha.
Shimshon?
It's an excellent kasha.
And he was a nazir,
yep.
kind of nazir, no less.
Some kind of nazir. There's a whole category of Hilchos Nazir called Nazir Shimon.
This point.
I don't know. Excellent question.
Back to the rest of the question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to agree.
I don't think so. Again, unless some lamdan in Chassidus can tell me the dakistik a chilik between Marish Chayra and Atzvus. Otherwise, yeah, it's safe to say that Rav Nachman would disagree with us.
I would say though,
yeah,
that you've got the two opposite opinions. Again, there's the simcha, like the Meshech Chochmah says in the Torah. There, the time he learns the whole pasuk differently. There in the Mitzvot and the Misnagdim should wait to learn the pasuk. Takas Asher Lo about it, but you did it in simcha. That we should have been satisfied with having a small amount of dasha. They wanted more. To be like, in other words, a person who's not satisfied with what he has wants a lot. So there he learned the pshat is that that's why the play happened. But the Chassidus, but the Pashim pshat is like the Rabbi brings in the Torah, that even if a person does everything right, but the time is he didn't do it the simcha.
right.
So Pashim is a true kind of simcha, like it says in Tilman, equals Hashem the simcha. So serving
Again, but I don't think that's a steer to what he's saying now. Simcha shal mitzvah. When you're holding by the mitzvah already, yeah, it would seem that you've conquered your Yetzer Hara. If you're holding by kiyum mitzvahs, so you conquer your Yetzer Hara. Again, there's no need for atzvus. There's no need for Marish Chayra. He's talking about when you're locked in a mortal battle with your Yetzer Hara for taiva. When you have a Yetzer Hara for taiva, anger can be a useful tool. And even the anger that's directed inwardly.
This is the Baal
No, this is the Meshalech. You came late. The secret to life is showing up. You missed the Baal Tanya.